एवरीवन वेलकम टू माय यूट्यूब चैनल द सोलफुल डायरी। आज की वीडियो में हम बात करेंगे विलियम वर्ड्सवर्थ के पोम माइकल के बारे में। पोएट के बारे में हम पहले ही एक वीडियो में डिस्कस कर चुके हैं जिसका लिंक डिस्क्रिप्शन में है। चलिए आज पोम के बारे में डिस्कस करते हैं। चलिए पोम को इन डेप्थ डिस्कस करने से पहले जान लेते हैं उसके कुछ की फीचर्स। पोम एक बैलेट है। बैलेट क्या होता है? एक स्टोरी या पोम जिसमें कोई स्टोरी नरेट होती हो। ये पोम 1800 में लिखी गई है एट ग्रासमर एंड पब्लिश्ड इन द सेकेंड एडिशन ऑफ द लिरिकल बैलेट्स। ये पोम डील करती है मैन के स्ट्रगल से इन द हॉस्टाइल वर्ल्ड टू मेंटेन हिज वैल्यूज एंड रेपुटेशन थ्रू द लाइफ ऑफ माइकल, जो हमेशा अकेले रहता। एक पेस्टोरल पोम है और ये किससे क्लोजनेस रिजेंबल करते हैं? सॉलिट्यूड्स इन द माउंटेन एज वेल एज द डिफिकल्ट लाइफ लेड बाय द पीपल इन द माउंटेन्स। माइकल जो स्टोरी है माइकल के बारे में वो पोएट ने सुनी थी जब वो यंग थे। इसकी वजह से उन्हें दूसरे लोगों के सोचने का महसूस हुआ। थिंक ऑन मैन, द हार्ट ऑफ मैन एंड ह्यूमन लाइफ। पोम जो है वो एक ओल्ड शेफर्ड की लाइफ को डिपिक्ट करता है, उसकी वाइफ और उसके सन ल्यूक के बारे में। जो ल्यूक है वो जब बड़ा होता है तो वो अपने फादर का कंफर्ट और डेली होप बन जाता है। जब लड़का 18 ईयर्स का होता है तो माइकल जो है उसको डेट्स ऑफन अपने नेफ्यू के भतीजे के डेट्स क्लियर करने होते हैं। अपना लॉस को कंपेंसेट करने के लिए वो अपने सन को एक डिस्टेंट रिलेटिव के पास भेज देता है एम्प्लॉयमेंट के लिए। वहाँ जाने से पहले माइकल जो है उसे इंस्ट्रक्शंस देता है ल्यूक को कि कैसे वो ऑब्लाइज्ड है अपने फादर्स के लिए, और उसे प्रॉमिस करना है कि वो अपनी ड्यूटीज जो है वो फुलफिल करेगा पूरी। पर जब लड़का वहाँ जाता है तो वो डिस्ट्रैक्ट हो जाता है और उस आउटर वर्ल्ड से टेम्प्ट हो जाता है और ओल्ड माइकल और उसकी वाइफ माइकल की वाइफ को अकेले छोड़ देता है ताकि वो अपने केयर खुद से करें। माइकल एक सिंपल पेस्टोरल पोम है। एग्जैक्ट डेफिनेशन पेस्टोरल के नहीं फॉलो करता है। पोम के इसके एक पैथेटिक लाइफ कंडीशंस बता रहे हैं पुअर शेफर्ड माइकल के। जो पोम की सेटिंग है वो पेस्टोरल है। कहाँ होते हैं? ग्रीन हेड किल। बट इसमें क्या मिसिंग है? आर्टिस्टिक ब्यूटी और मूड of the typical pastoral poems. Poem is conceived of a great mind like that of Wordsworth, an acclaimed natural poet, thus earned the credit of a pastoral poem, despite him missing out to meet up the standard of traditional pastoral farm and style. Poem को in depth discuss करते हैं. Lines 1 to 39. If from the public way you turn your steps at the tumultuous brook of Greenhead Hill, you will suppose that within a bright path your feet must struggle in such bold ascent. The pastoral mountains front you face to face. Courage, for around that boisterous brook the mountains have all opened out themselves and made a hidden valley of their own. No habitation can be seen, but they who journey thither find themselves alone, with a few sheep, with rocks and stones and kites that overhead are sailing in the sky. It is in truth an utter solitude. Nor should I have made mention of this tale, but for one object which you might pass by, might see and notice not. Beside the brook appears a straggling heap of unhewn stones, and to that simple object appertains a story unenriched with strange events, yet not unfit, I deem, from the fireside. But for the summer shade, it was the first of those domestic tales that spake to me of shepherds, dwellers in the valleys, men whom I already left, not verily for their own sakes, but for the fields and hills, where was their occupation and abode, and hence the still, while I was yet a boy, careless of books, yet having felt the power of nature by the gentle agency of natural objects led me on the field. For passions that were not my own, and think at random and imperfectly indeed, on man, the heart of man and human life. Therefore, although it be a history, homely and rude, I will relate the same for the delight of a few natural hearts and with yet fonder feeling for the sake of youthful poets. Who among these hills will be my second self when I am gone? जो स्टार्टिंग लाइन्स है उसमें पोएट ने माइकल कहाँ रहता है उसका डिस्क्रिप्शन दिया और कैसा ऐसा लगता है जैसे वो एक पैराडाइज में रहता हो. इट इज़ अ लोनली वैली ऑफ ग्रीन हेड किल. एक सॉलिटरी प्लेस है अमंग द हाई माउंटेन्स. एक स्मॉल रिवर है बाय द साइड ऑफ दैट अनकट स्टोन्स है उसके आसपास. प्लेस जो है वो किससे एसोसिएटेड है? स्ट्रेंज इवेंट्स और रिच स्ट्रेंज इवेंट्स, स्मॉल टेल्स ऑफ शेफर्ड्स. पोएट जो वो एक बॉय है केयरलेस ऑफ बुक्स yet having felt the power of natural objects. वो यहाँ पे जो भी लोग हैं और वो कैसे लाइफ जीते उसके बारे में बता रहा है. He starts to think of on man, the heart of man and human. और पोएट क्या अपना सब्जेक्ट इंट्रोड्यूस करता है. क्या है सब्जेक्ट? अ होमली एंड रूड लाइफ ऑफ अ शेफर्ड. Lines 40 to 77. On the forest side in Grasmere Vale there dwelt a shepherd. Michael was his name, an old man stout of heart and strong of limb. His bodily frame had been from youth to age. Of an unusual strength, his mind was keen, intense and frugal, apt for all affairs, and in his shepherd's calling he was prompt and watchful more than ordinary men. Hence had he learned the meaning of all winds, of blasts of every tone, and oftentimes, when others he did not, he heard the south, much subterraneous music, like the noise of bagpipers on distant highland hills. The shepherd, at such warning of his flock, bethought him and to himself would say, the winds are now devising work for me. And truly, at all times the storm that drives a traveller to a shelter summoned him. Up to the mountains he had been alone, amid the heart of many thousand mists that came to him and left him on the heights. So lived he till his 80th year was past, and grossly that men errs who should suppose that the green valleys and the streams and rocks were things indifferent to the shepherd's thoughts, fields where with cheerful spirits he had breathed, the common air hills, which with vigorous step he had so often climbed, which had impressed so many incidents upon his mind of hardship, skills, or courage, joy, or fear, which, like a book, preserved the memory of the dumb animals whom he had saved, had fed or sheltered, linking to such acts the certainty of honorable gain. Those fields, those hills, what could they less had laid strong hold on his affections were to him a pleasurable feeling of blind love, the pleasure which there is in life itself. इसमें पोएट ने प्रोटैगनिस्ट को इंट्रोड्यूस किया जो कि माइकल है. He was an old man, stout of heart and strong of limb. और उसके ऑक्यूपेशन में वो प्रॉम्प्ट और वॉचफुल और एक मोर देन एन ऑर्डिनरी मैन. वो नेचर ऑफ विंड्स भी समझ सकता था. When the south wind blew, he anticipated the storm and so he headed to the mountain top to bring his sheep to safety. उसकी मेमोरी में बहुत सारे हार्डशिप के इंसिडेंट्स थे, स्किल और करेज के, जॉय या फियर के. उसके लिए हिल्स जो हैं वो एक बुक की तरह थे. बहुत सारे एक्सपीरियंसेस रीड कर सकता है. प्लेजर, फीलिंग ऑफ blind love for the fields. 28 to 109. His days had not been passed in singleness. His helpmate was a comely matron, old, though younger than himself, full 20 years. She was a woman of a stirring life, whose heart was in her house. Two wheels she had, of antique form, this large for spinning wool, that small for flax, and if one wheel had rest, it was because the other was at work. The pair had but one inmate in their house, an only child, who had been born to them when Michael, telling over his years, began to deem that he was old, in shepherd's phrase, with one foot in the grave. This only son, with two brave sheep dogs, tried in many a storm, the one of an inestimable worth, made all their household, I may truly say, that they were a proverb in the vale, for endless industry when day was gone, and from their occupations out of doors, the son and father were come home. Even then their labor did not cease, unless when all turned to the cleanly supper board, and there, each with a mess of pottage and skimmed milk, sat round the basket piled with oaten cakes, and their plain home-made cheese. Yet when the meal was ended, Luke, for so the son was named, and his old father, both betook themselves to such convenient work as might employ their hands by the fireside, perhaps to card wool for the housewife's spindle, or repair some injury done to sickle flay, or scythe, or other implement of house or fields. इसमें पोएट ने माइकल के वाइफ और बच्चे को डिस्क्राइब किया. हिज वाइफ वाज 20 years younger than him. वो एक होमली वुमेन, फुली कॉन्शियस ऑफ हर डोमेस्टिक ड्यूटीज़, मतलब हाउस वाइफ थी. उसे अपनी ड्यूटीज़ के बारे में बहुत अच्छे से पता था. उसके पास दो व्हील्स थे, एक स्पिनिंग वूल के लिए और दूसरा फ्लैक्स को स्पिन करने के लिए. सन जो था वो उनके ओल्ड एज में बॉर्न हुआ था. और जब वो यंग एज का होता है तो चाइल्ड सीम्स टू हेल्प हिज पेरेंट्स. किसके साथ? जो दो शीप डॉग्स थे उनके साथ ल्यूक जो है वो हेल्प करता था. जो ट्रायो है, मतलब मदर, फादर और ल्यूक, वो हार्ड वर्क अमंग द विलेजर्स को पोर्ट्रे करते हैं. जब वो रात को अपने काम से फ्री हो जाते थे, माइकल एंड ल्यूक रिपेयरिंग plow or sickle on cleaning wool. The speaker elaborates how they live in dependence on nature. Lines 110 to 139. Down from the ceiling, by the chimney's edge, this is an ancient, uncount country style, with huge and black projection over broad, large space beneath, as duly as the light of day grew dim. The housewife hung a lamp, an aged utensil which had performed service beyond all other of its kind. Early at evening did it burn unlit, surviving comrade of uncounted hours, which, going by from year to year, had found and left the couple neither gay perhaps, nor cheerful, yet with objects and with hopes, living a life of eager industry. And now, when Luke had reached his 18th year, there by the light of this old lamp they sat, father and son, while far into the night the housewife plied her own peculiar work, making the cottage through the silent hours murmur as with the sound of summer flies. This light was famous in its neighborhood and was a public symbol of the life that thrifty pair had lived, for as it chanced, a cottage on a plot of rising ground stood single with large prospect north and south, high into Eastdale up to Dunmail Ridge and westward to the village near the lake. And from this constant light, so regular and far, so far seen, the house itself by all who dwelt within the limits of the vale, both old and young, was named the Evening Star. पोएट ने इस इन लाइंस में माइकल और उसके फैमिली के हाउस और उनकी लाइफ का बहुत विविड डिस्क्रिप्शन दिया है। जो कॉटेज जहाँ वो लेते थे वो ह्यूज प्रोजेक्टेड पीस ऑफ लैंड में था। सनसेट व्हेन द सनसेट इजाबेला बीइंग अ हाउस ऑफ इजाबेला कौन है? वाइफ है माइकल की। वो क्या करती थी? लैम्प जलाती थी हैंगिंग फ्रॉम द लाइट थी हाउस में। वो क्या सिंबलाइज करती थी? लिव ऑफ द फैमिली engages in after the sunset, also a name meaning for the house. हाउस को क्या कहते थे? इवनिंग स्टार। फॉर व्हेन द फेलो विलेजर्स रिटायर टू वर्क, वो तीनों माइकल, ल्यूक और इजाबेला जो है वो कंटिन्यू करते थे वर्क करना कॉटेज में बाय द रिस्पेक्टिव टाइप्स ऑफ इक्विपमेंट्स। जो भी इक्विपमेंट्स उनके पास थे उससे वो तीनों वर्क करते थे। Lines 140 to 176. Thus living on through such a length of years, the shepherd, if he loved himself, must needs have loved his helpmate, but to Michael's heart, the son of his old age was yet more dear, less from instinctive tenderness, the same fond spirit that blindly works in the blood of all, than that a child, more than all other gifts than earth can offer to declining man, brings hope with it and forward looking thoughts and stirrings of inquietude when they, by tendency of natural needs, must fail. Exceeding was the love he bare to him. His heart and his heart's joy, for oftentimes old Michael, while he was a babe in arms, has done his female service not alone for pastime and delight, as it is the use of fathers, but with patient mind enforced to act of tenderness, and he had rocked his cradle as with a woman's gentle hand. And in a later time, ere yet the boy had put on boy's attire, did Michael love, albeit of a stern, unbending mind, to have the young one in his sight when the wrought in his field or in his shepherd's stool, sate with a fretted sheep before him stretched under the large old oak, then near his door, stood single and from matchless depth of shade, chosen for the shearer's covert from the sun. Hence, in a rustic dialect was called the clipping tree, a name which yet it bears there, while they two were sitting in the shade, with others round them, earnest, all in blight. Would Michael exercise his heart with the looks of fond correction and reproof bestowed upon the child if he disturbed the sheep by catching at their legs or with his shouts scared them while they lay still beneath the shears. ये जो बॉन्ड है ये जो लाइन्स है इसमें बॉन्ड पोर्ट्रे किया गया माइकल और उसके सन ल्यूक के बीच में जो शेफर्ड वो अपनी वाइफ इजाबेला को लग बट व्हेन ल्यूक एंटर्ड देयर लाइफ केम टू लव हिज सन मोर जब ल्यूक उनकी लाइफ में आया तो वो अपने बेटे को ज़्यादा करने लगे जब वो आया तो वो अपने बेटे को बहुत ज़्यादा लव करने लगे क्योंकि वो होप करते थे अपने एक अच्छे फ्यूचर के अपने बेटे के साथ ओल्ड एज में माइकल के लिए ल्यूक एक गिफ्ट कंसिडर किया जाता था इफ अ मैन बाय द टेंडेंसी ऑफ नेचर नीड्स मस्ट फेल जब वो लड़का बच्चा होता छोटा ही टेम्पटेड हिम मतलब वो अपने मम्मा के पापा के कंफर्ट में रहता था क्योंकि वो सब उसके लिए पास्ट बच्चे उनके लिए पास टाइम होता था वो ध्यान से देखते थे और वर्ड्सवर्थ ने पोर्ट्रे किया है फादर और सन की बॉन्डिंग फॉर एट अ वेरी यंग एज माइकल जो है वो बॉय को बहुत यंग एज से फील्ड में ले जाता था अंडर द ओक ट्री नोन एज क्लिप ट्री he will ensure the boy getting along with the sheep at the same time, checking on him from throwing any tantrums that would scare the sheep off. Lines 177 to 206. And when by heaven's good grace the boy grew up, a healthy lad, and carried in his cheek two steady roses that were 5 years old, then Michael from a winter coppice cut with his own hand a sapling, which he hooped with iron, making it throughout and all two requisites, a perfect shepherd's staff, and gave it to the boy, wherewith equipped he as a watchman oftentimes was placed at gate or gap to stem or turn the flock, and to his office prematurely called. There stood the Hurricane, as you will divine, something between a hindrance and a help, and for this cause not always, I believe, receiving from his father hire of praise, though not was left undone with staff or voice, a looks or threatening gestures could perform. But soon as Luke, full 10 years old, could stand against the mountain blasts and to the heights, not fearing toil nor length of weary ways, he was he with his father daily went and they were as companions. Why should I relate that objects which the shepherd loved before were there and now, that from the boy there came feelings and emanations, things which were light to the sun and music to the wind, and that the old man's heart seemed born again. Thus, in his father's sight, the boy grew up, and now, when had reached his 18th year, he was his comfort and his daily hope. इस लाइन्स में पोएट ने बताया पोएट जो है शेयर करे ग्लिम्स कि ल्यूक कैसे 18 इयर्स का यंग मैन हो चुका है किसके अंदर अपने फादर की केयर और गाइडेंस के अंदर जब ल्यूक 5 इयर्स था तब से माइकल ने उसे ट्रेन किया था टू बी अ शेफर्ड स्टाफ और कैसे शीप्स को गाइड करना है जब वो 5 इयर्स का था तो उसके वर्क्स होते थे वो मोर हिंडर करते थे रादर देन बीइंग ऑफ एनी हेल्प बट जब वह जैसे जैसे बड़ा होना था वो एक बोल्ड बॉय वो जो डरता नहीं था हार्ड वर्क करने से था और जैसे जैसे जब वो बड़ा हुआ तो वो अपने फादर के लिए एक फ्रेंड टू बी अ हेल्दी यंग मैन ऑफ 18 years. Lines 207 to 303. While in the sort, the simple household lived, from day to day, to Michael's ear there came the stressful, tidings long before the time of which I speak. The shepherd had been bound in surety for his brother's son, a man of an industrious life and an ample means, but unforeseen misfortunes suddenly had pressed upon him, and old Michael now was summoned to discharge the forfeiture, a grievous penalty but little less than half his substance. This unlooked for claim at the first hearing for a moment took more hope out of his life than he supposed that any old man ever could have lost. Soon as he had armed himself with strength to look his trouble in the face, it seemed the shepherd's sole resource to sell at once a portion of his patrimonial fields. Such was his first resolve. He thought again, and his heart failed him. Isabel, said he, 2 evenings after he heard the news, I have been toiling more than 70 years, and in the open sunshine of God's love have we all lived. Yet, if these fields of ours should pass into a stranger's hand, I think that I could now not lie quiet in my grave. Our lot is a hard lot. The sun himself has scarcely been more diligent than I, and I have lived to be a fool at last. To my own family, an evil man that was and made an evil choice. If he were false to us, and if he were not false, there are 10,000 to whom loss like this had been no sorrow. If I forgive him, but 'twere better to be dumb than to talk thus. When I began, my purpose was to speak of remedies and of a cheerful hope. Our Luke shall leave us, Isabel. The land shall not go from us, and it shall be free. We shall possess it, free as it is the wind that passes over it. We have, thou knowest, another kinsman. He will be our friend. In this distress, he is a prosperous man, thriving in trade. And Luke to him shall go, and with his kinsman help and his own thrift, he quickly will repair this loss, and then he may return to us. If here he stay, what can be done? Where every one is poor, what can be gained? Thus the old man paused, and Isabel sat silent, for her mind was busy looking back into past times. This Richard Bateman, thought she to herself. He was a parish boy at the church door. They made a gathering for him. Shillings, pence, and halfpennies were with the neighbors bought a basket which they filled with peddlers' wares, and with this basket on his arm the lad went up to London, found a master there, who out of many chose the trusty boy to go and overlooked his merchandise beyond the seas, where he grew wondrous rich and left estates and monies to the poor. And at this birthplace built a chapel floored with marble which he sent from foreign lands. These thoughts and many others of like sort passed quickly through the mind of Isabel, and her face brightened. The old man was glad and thus resumed, well, Isabel, the scheme these 2 days has been meat and to drink to me. Far more than we have lost is left us yet. We have enough. I wish indeed that I were younger, but this hope is a good hope. Made ready Luke's best garments of the best, by for him more. and let us send him forth tomorrow or the next day or tonight if he could go. The boy should go tonight. Here Michael ceased and to the fields went forth. With a light heart, the housewife for 5 days was restless morn and night, and all day long wrought on with her best fingers to prepare things needful for the journey of her son. But Isabel was glad when Sunday came to stop her in her work, for when she lay by Michael's side, she through the last 2 nights heard him how he was troubled in his sleep, and when they rose at morning, she could see that all his hopes were gone. That day at noon, she said to Luke, while they two by themselves were sitting at the door, "Thou must not go. We have no other child but thee to lose, none to remember. Do not go away. For if thou leave thy father, he will die." The youth made answer with a jocund voice, and Isabel, when she had told her fears, recovered heart that evening. Her best fare did she bring forth, and all together sat like happy people round a Christmas fire. वर्ड्सवर्थ जो है वो हैप्पी टेल में एक ट्विस्ट लाता है लाइन 207 जब वो डिस्ट्रेसफुल इवेंट माइकल was called to clear out the debt of his nephew. Strategic. Michael realizes that the repayment would cost him half as well. माइकल को रियलाइज होता है कि अगर वो डेट क्लियर करेगा तो उसके हाफ वेल चले उसको एक आइडिया आता है तो वो सोचता है ल्यू को एक सिटी में टू वर्क अंडर द वेल्दी किंग्समैन भेज देता है और वो विटनेस करते हैं बहुत सारे यंग मैन जो है वो सिटी जाके रिच हो जाते हैं और वो सोचता है कि होप करता है कि उसके साथ भी सेम होएगा और उसे प्रॉपर्टी नहीं सेल करनी पड़ेगी इजाबेल जो है वो जो भी रिक्वायर्ड होता है वो सब जर्नी के लिए इकट्ठा कर दिया और सेम टाइम पे वरीड होती है कि अपने हस्बैंड की सिचुएशन के लिए और ल्यूक जो है वो उसे रिश्योर करता है कि ही वुड रिपे द डेट और डिसाइड करता है घर छोड़ने का Lines 305 to 361. With daylight, Isabel resumed her work, and all the ensuing week the house appeared as cheerful as a grove in spring at length. The expected letter from their kinsman came, with kind assurances that he would do his utmost for the welfare of the boy, to which requests were added that forthwith he might be sent to him 10 times or more. The letter was read over. Isabel went forth to show it to the neighbors round. Nor was there at the time on English land a proud heart than Luke's. When Isabel had to her house returned, the old man said, "He shall depart tomorrow." To this word the housewife answered, talking much of things which, if at such short notice he should go, would surely be forgotten. But at length she gave consent, and Michael was at ease. Near the tumultuous brook of Green Head Gill, in that deep valley, Michael had designed to build a sheepfold, and before he heard the tidings of his melancholy loss, for the same purpose he had gathered up a heap of stones which by the streamlet's edge lay drawn together ready for the work. With Luke that evening did the ward he worked, and as soon as they had reached the place he stopped. And as the old man spake to him, "My son, tomorrow thou wilt leave me. With full heart I look upon thee, for thou art the same that wert a promise to me ere thy birth, and all thy life has been my daily joy. I will relate to thee some little part Of our two histories, twill do thee good. When thou art from me, even if I should touch one thing thou canst not know of after thou first camest into the world, as oft befalls. To new-born infants thou didst sleep away 2 days, and blessings from thy father's tongue then fell upon thee. Day by day passed on, and still I loved thee with increasing love. Never to living ear came sweeter sounds than when I heard thee by our own fireside, first uttering without words a natural tune, while thou, a feeding babe, didst in thy joy sing at thy mother's breast. Month followed month, and in the open fields my life was passed, and on the mountain hills I think that thou hadst been brought up upon thy father's knees. But we were playmates, Luke, among these hills, as well thou knowest, in us the old and young have played together, nor with me didst thou lack any pleasure which a boy can know. Luke had a manly heart, but at these words he sobbed aloud. The old man grasped his hand and said, Nay, do not take it so. I see that these are the things of which I need not speak. ये जो लाइन्स है ये कैप्चर कर रही है माइकल के एक्साइटमेंट for sending his son to the city or emotional transaction between emotional conversation between the father and the son. जो फैमिली है वो प्रिपेयर करती है उसको जर्नी में भेजने के लिए. एक दिन पहले डिपार्चर से माइकल जो है वो उसे वैली के पास ले जाए एक कहाँ जहाँ पे उसने प्लान किया होता है एक शीप फोल्ड बनाने का. कहते हैं जो भी मैं वो रिकलेक्ट करते हैं जो भी मेमोरीज उन्होंने साथ में स्पेंड किया और अपना लव ल्यूक के तरह. इमोशनल साइड ये जो लाइन्स है वो प्रेजेंट करती है इमोशनल साइड ऑफ द मेकर द फादर हु मेक्स द सन क्राई. Lines 362 419. Even to the utmost I have been to thee, a kind and a good father, and herein I but repay a gift which I myself received at others' hands. For though now old, beyond the common life of man, I still remember them who loved me in my youth. Both of them sleep together here they lived, as all their forefathers had done, and when at length their time was come, they were not loth to give their bodies to the family mould. I wished that thou shouldst live the life they lived, but 'tis a long time to look back, my son, and see so little gain from 60 years. These fields were burdened when they came to me, till I was 40 years of age, not more. Then half of my inheritance was mine. I toiled and toiled. God blessed me in my work, until these 3 weeks past the land was free. It looks as if it never could endure another master. Heaven forgive me, Luke, if I judge ill for thee, but it seems good that thou shouldst go. The old man paused, then pointing to the stones near which they stood. Thus, after a short silence, he resumed, This was a work for us, and now, my son, it is a work for me. But lay once too. Here, lay it for me, Luke, with thine own hands. Nay, boy, be of good hope. We both may live to see a better day. At 84, and still am strong and hale. Do thou thy past. I will do mine, I will begin again, with many tasks that were resigned to thee. Up to the heights and in among the storms will I without thee go again, unto all works which I was wont to alone. Before I knew thy fits, heaven bless thee, bear thy heart these 2 weeks has been beaten fast, with many hopes it should go be so. Yes, yes, I knew that thou couldst never have a wish to leave me, Luke. Thou hast been bound to me only by links of love. When thou art gone, what will be left us? But I forget my purposes. Lay now the cornerstone, as I requested, and hereafter, Luke, when thou art gone away, should a woman be thy companions, think of me, my son, and of this moment hither turn thy thoughts, and God will strengthen thee amid all fear and all temptation. Luke, I pray that thou mayst bear in mind the life thy fathers lived, who being innocent did for that cause bestir them in good deeds. Now fare thee well. When thou returnest, thou in this place wilt see a work which is not here a covenant 'twill be between us, but whatever fate befall thee, I shall love thee to the last and bear thy memory with me to the grave. माइकल जो है वो स्पीक करता है अपने फादर के बारे में, हाँ वो सब कैसे फील्ड में वर्क फिर बताते हैं. ही टेल्स द बॉय अबाउट द रीज़न कि वो उसे क्यों अलग भेज रहे हैं इंस्टेड ऑफ कीपिंग हिम हियर. एंड वो कहता है कि बॉय एक कॉर्नर स्टोर रखेगा जिस बिलीविंग दैट ही वुड हेल्प द बॉय टू रिमेंबर द हार्ड वर्क ऑफ हिज पेरेंट्स इन हिम. टेल्स ल्यूक how he would love him to the last. Lines 420 to 449. The shepherd entered here, and Luke stopped down, and as his father had requested, laid the first stone of the sheepfold. At the sight, the old man's grief broke from him to his heart. He pressed his son, he kissed him and wept, and to the house together they returned. Hush was that house in peace, or seeming peace. Ere the night fell, with morrow's dawn the boy began his journey, and when he had reached the public way, he put on a bold face, and all the neighbors, as he passed their door, came forth with wishes and with farewell prayers that followed him till he was out of sight. A good report did from the kinsman come of Luke and his well-doing, and the boy wrote loving letters full of wondrous news, which, as the housewife phrased it, were throughout prettiest letters that were ever seen. Both parents read them with rejoicing hearts. So many months passed on, and once again the shepherd went about his daily walk with confident and cheerful thoughts. And now, sometimes when he could find a leisure hour, he to that valley took his way, and there wrought at the sheepfold. Meantime, Luke began to slacken in his duty, and at length he, in the dissolute city, gave himself to evil courses. Ignominy and shame fell on him, so that he was driven at last to seek a hiding place beyond the seas. वर्ड्सवर्थ जो है इलाबोरेट करता है कि जो बॉय अपने पेरेंट्स की गुडविल और नेबर्स के वेल विशेस के साथ जाता है, वो मतलब इविल मतलब बैड चीज़ें करता है सिटी में जाके, और पूरे विलेज के लिए शेम लेके आता है. पहले वो स्टार्टिंग में वर्क हार्ड करता है, गुड फेम अर्न करता है फॉर हिमसेल्फ, और इससे जो ओल्ड कपल होता है वो हैप्पी होते हैं. जैसे जैसे टाइम आता है वो सिटी लाइफ से अट्रैक्ट होता है, और ही इज़ टेकन बाय द एविल क्लॉज जो एविल्स होते हैं सोसाइटी के, और वो उसको ओवर पावर कर लेते हैं और वो गुडनेस से दूर चला जाता है। Lines 450 to 484. There is a comfort in the strength of love. It will make a thing endurable which else would overset the brain or break the heart. I have conversed with more than one who well remember the old man and what he was years after he had heard this heavy news. His bodily frame had been from your to an unusual strength. Among the rocks he went, and still looked up to the sun and cloud, and listened to the wind, and as before performed all kinds of labor for the sheep and for the land a small inheritance. To that hollow dell from time to time did he repair to build the fold of which his flock had need. He is not forgotten yet the pity which was then in every heart for the old man, and 'tis believed by all. And many a day he thither went and never lifted up a single stone. There by the sheepfold sometimes was he seen, sitting alone and with his faithful dog. Then old beside him, lying at his feet, the length of full 7 years from time to time. He at the building of the sheepfold wrought, and left the work unfinished when he died. 3 years or little more did Isabel survive her husband. At her death the estate was sold and went into a stranger's hand. The cottage, which was named the Evening Star, is gone. The plowshare has been through the ground on which it stood. Great changes have been wrought in all the neighborhood, yet the oak is left that grew beside their door, and the remains of the unfinished sheep fold many seen beside the boisterous brook of green head kill. जो एंड की लाइन्स उसमें पोएट बताता है कि माइकल जो है उसको उसके बेटे की हैफिजर्ड लाइफ के बारे में पता चलता है। बट ओल्ड मैन है वो अनयूजुअल स्ट्रेंथ के साथ न्यूज़ एक्सेप्ट करता है, and love went about his work just although वो disappointed था, but उसने क्या sheepfold built किया until he could no longer work on it. Still he seems to be found around the sheepfold with his dog often until 7 years later. He dies a lonely death with his son, who used to be his helpmate and companion. Another three, Isabel too dies, leaving the land in the hands of a stranger. In the place where they lived, nothing remains now except for the half finished sheepfold that stands to testify the story of Michael. Poetic devices. Michael deals with a simple shepherd whose tale is narrated in simple language. Still, Wordsworth has incorporated some of the literary and poetic techniques such as personification, illusion, amplification, aphorism, metaphors, similes, analogies, imagery, and mood. Personification. Personification is when a non living thing is given living or human characteristics or abilities. This popular poem of Wordsworth he has used personification at many levels while he describes the elements and characteristics, nature in close association with the life of Michael. The land, brook, sun, wind, and the field, etc., are given human attributes in the poem. As he says, the land was free, boisterous brook. The sun himself has scarcely been more diligent than free as in the wind. The field went forth with a light heart, and her mind was busy. Illusion. Michael is enriched with references that echo biblical allusions. Michael's situations parallels narratives such as the sacrifice of Isaac, the prophets of Isaac, and the prodigal son. When Michael describes the way he is blessed, God blessed me in my work. It alludes to Isaac being blessed with 100% profit for his hard work. Also, the father and son too is compared to the relationship between Abraham and Isaac. Also, towards the end, Luke's act of letting go of his father's word to be rotten in base refers to the prodigal son who goes away to exploit the wealth of his father, but here he goes away to forget all the good teachings of his father. Amplification. Amplification as a literary technique embellishes a sentence by adding more information to it in order to its worth and understandability. In Michael, Isabel tells Luke, "Do not go away, for if thou leave thy father, he will die," which exaggerates the father son strong bond. Aphorism. Aphorism is a phrase that embodies a moral, a pithy observation that contains a general truth. While parting, Michael tells Luke, "God will strengthen thee amid all fear and all temptations." Alliteration. Alliteration is the occurrence of the same letter or sound at the beginning of adjacent or closely connected words, and in Michael, alliteration could be seen in the lines boisterous brook, summer shade, sailing in the sky, made mention, which provide rhythm and musicality. Metaphors, simile, and analogies. Simile is comparing one with the other, while a metaphor is often compares something with something else. Similarly, an analogy is comparing one with the other to make some sort of an explanatory point. Often, metaphors and similes are combined when creating like an analogy. Wordsworth and Michael has used the comparisons in the line, like a book reserved the memory, free as is the wind, and the land was a precious gem to draw an analogy. Imagery and mood. Imagery and setting help a writer create a mood that could affect the emotional reaction of the readers towards the piece of literature. Wordsworth's imagery and mood on the lines and kites that overhead are sailing in the sky. The mountains have all opened out themselves and made a hidden valley of their own. The pastoral mountains front you, and the light to the sun and music to the wind adds to the pastoral beauty of the poem. Michael is a tragic poem that deals with the traumatic life of Michael, a shepherd with dignity. Wordsworth focuses on man's struggle to maintain himself and his values in a hostile world that tries to pull him down. It delineates how an orderly life of a man breaks up into disconnectedness and chaos. Theme and setting go hand in hand to express the purpose of the poet. The poet got the inspiration from for this poem when he visited the lonely valley of Greenhead Hill. In this place of utter solitude, he learned about the tales of shepherds. Thus, he set the poem in the hills of Gransmere Valley, an idealized rural setting. Here, Michael, the shepherd on whom the poem is written, leads a respectable life until fate has its way with him. क्यों आई होप आज की वीडियो आपको पसंद है। कैसी लगी हमें कमेंट करके बताएं, और हमें ये भी कमेंट करके बताएं कि आप आने वाली वीडियोस किस टॉपिक पर देखना चाहते हैं। अगर वीडियो अच्छी लगी तो लाइक शेयर एंड सब्सक्राइब टू माय चैनल। मिलते हैं कल एक और इन्फॉर्मेटिव वीडियो के साथ शाम 4 बजे। थैंक यू।